Hey, soldiers, Tyrone Keys here. I am here today with Yana Pomerants. Did I say that right?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Now, Yana is a special guest. She's going to be talking to us today about her trip through Belarus recently. Of course, we all know that Belarus is one of the heavily sanctioned countries, along with Russia. And I've expressed on the channel before my belief that these sanctions are just an opportunity, a Trojan horse, if you will, to usher in this new economic order, this new global economic order that, for whatever reason, the West and leftists around the globe really want to see happen. So, we're going to talk about whether or not the sanctions are actually working as desired, where they're imposed, and we've talked ad nauseum about the fact that here in America, the sanctions are working well to hurt our economy. So they've boomeranged uh, quite effectively on us. So let's go ahead and get into it. I will cue this up by uh, Yana. We talked just a moment ago about this Jerusalem Post article. How can sanctions be better applied on Russia and Belarus? Which, in this article, is in the Jerusalem Post, came out on yesterday. That indicates to me that they're not working. The sanctions are not working as desired. So, give us a little bit of background about yourself, and then weigh in on that. What you've seen in your travels recently.
Okay. Well, my background is that I was born in Russia. I grew up in Belarus during the time when Belarus separated, well, officially separated from the Soviet Union. So we originally moved there, it was not Belarus, and then it became, well, it wasn't independent, then it became sort of
Okay, so you were there.
independent.
This was during the late '80s, I would imagine.
Well, yes, we moved in 85.
Okay.
And then actually, as soon as we moved there, like a year after Chernobyl disaster happened,
Okay.
very close to where it was, I mean, pretty close to where we were living. And then in 91, of course, the Soviet Union collapsed and Belarus and in Ukraine and many other republics became independent from Russia.
Gotcha.
And since then, so I was living there until I finished seventh grade there. So I was about 14, close to 14 years old when I came to America
Okay.
in 98. So
Okay.
I lived there up to 98. And then, of course, still have family, friends, many people that I keep in touch with over there. In terms of my recent trip, I actually went to four different countries.
Okay.
I ended up going to Latvia, Lithuania, then Belarus, and then Poland.
Okay.
So it was a very interesting trip, seeing different movements and people and attitudes of people in these four different countries that are very close to each other.
Okay. So you've just deviating.
Oh, and regarding the Jerusalem Post
Mhm.
article, well, I've heard from other sources as well that the European leaders are saying that the sanctions are quote unquote not working for what they wanted, what the West wanted. And it's not surprising because Russia, I think Russia and Belarus, because they are a unit, they actually are united officially in like their economic standing, and they're partners, and they were prepared
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah, that's what I understand. That these countries have kept relatively low debt. Uh, we could talk about the resiliency of the Eastern European people. Have been through a lot. The one thing that Americans, modern Americans, do not understand is conflict on our soil, and those kinds of difficulties. So, to that extent, what have you seen with regard to Belarus saying, you know what, we got these sanctions, but we're still moving forward? How are the people adjusting?
Well, yeah, the attitude of people that I noticed was not. They didn't seem very worried. The people that I came across with, I'm sure there's some that are worried as well, but people that I came across, I mean, there were some. Uh, for example, me and my friends were talking how the West, people in the West are afraid of shortages, food shortages, things like that. And we grew up over there in the 90s. And nobody in America has experienced what we had in the 90s over there. It was complete chaos. It was lawlessness. We did have a conflict. So Russia had a conflict with Chechnya
Right.
that was ongoing at that time. Belarus, the economy was out of control. I mean, we had constant shortages. We basically ate mostly grains. I
Okay.
mean, we had grains and sausages. Like that was like a very
Okay.
common meal. But what people, how people survived back then, and what people are still doing now, is that a lot of people
Hmm.
have plots of land that they have. Sometimes they live in the town, and then they'll have a plot of land somewhere outside of town. And we had a big plot of land, and it was my grandmother who was pretty much the person who was taking care of it. And so one of the things that people plant the most is potatoes,
Okay.
and they save those potatoes for the winter. People plant all types of vegetables, they preserve them for the winter. So we have lots of different types of preserves and like pickled vegetables and preserved berries, fruits, things like that. People utilize nature a lot, and they still do that. They go to the forest to collect mushrooms. We all knew what types of mushrooms to pick, which ones are edible, which ones are
Okay.
not edible. You dry them, and then they last forever. Those mushrooms. Same with well berries you can preserve. So that's and we were talking with my friends this time too that it's also kind of again coming back even to young people right now that they're having land and they're planting more because that's something that they've done already generationally, so it's not something that they even have to really get used to.
Right. Okay. And I think you know from conversations we've had, plus I've talked about it on the show with you and the ladies, that I'm a huge advocate for just that. And I
Hmm.
actually have potatoes that are coming up right now.
Oh
Um,
great. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, I think that Americans need to get kind of acclimated to that sort of self sufficiency in terms of
Hmm.
our lifestyle, and not just. I think we're seeing that as food prices rise, that we need to be more responsible for at least a portion of our calories
Right.
that we
And
take in.
also, this time, another example, I was with my family there and we stopped by a house where the lady owned 12 cows.
Okay. Okay.
And so
Wow.
that's a lot of cows. And she would sell all the milk. Like she had customers because people buy fresh milk.
Right.
That is something that is very common over there to instead of going to the store, and they actually prefer drinking the milk that's right out of the cow because it has higher fat and it can be used. I think they make butter. You can make butter
Okay.
out of
Right.
that, or
Mhm.
you can just use it for cooking, for drinking, and it's very healthy. So that's something I grew up on. I grew up on milk that we bought from a person who had a cow every single day.
Okay. And that's another aspect of this is understanding who you can partner with in the local community. Because in America, we are these supply lines are stretched all across the country in every different direction. And we've seen that fray over the past few years. And we always talk about, building those relationships locally so that you can A, reduce the cost in some cases of whatever it is you need to purchase, and B, maybe even setting up some sort of arrangements where maybe you have potatoes in my case and you need milk in you don't produce that. When we talk about these sanctions, I want to be careful and separate the people of a country or a region from the leadership of a region, because God knows I don't want to be judged solely by the leadership here in America. Okay. And I don't think any um, rational person would want that no matter where they live. So we've seen sort of an attack on the people of Belarus and Russia. Netflix comes to mind immediately. Netflix, to its own detriment, has taken away almost 7 million customers out of the region, just cut them off, as if Lukashenko and Putin are going to just capitulate at the threat of missing the last season of Stranger Things, which is crazy. But this hurts the people of Russia. Now, you had an incident where you had some difficulty in transportation because of some of the systems that have been interrupted. Is that right?
Well, the thing is that in order to get from Western Europe, so from the EU to Belarus or to Russia, you have to go by land. Going by air would be much, well, it will be longer, more expensive because you would have to go to Asia, maybe to Turkey, and then try to get into those countries. So right now, there's no air travel that in the past used to take like an hour flight from, like Latvia to Minsk, and now you have to go by the bus or by car, and the distance itself is not that long, but on the border it's a long line of buses and cars, trucks, tractor trailers going from Europe, either bringing in goods or taking out goods, and it's just a very long, long process. And then uh, they check everybody to make sure that you're following all the rules and you're not bringing in anything you're not supposed to bring in. And I know that one of the borders I was crossing was with Lithuania, and they're building more stations to accommodate all that flow of traffic. But it's just because of the sanctions on air travel, it became more difficult. Also, for citizens of Belarus and Russia, it's very difficult right now to get visas to get to EU or the United States. So that's one of the biggest complaints that I heard from people there, because they got so used to going to Europe for vacation, for work, for
Right.
different things, and now they got cut off.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that they're really not happy about, the people there.
Okay, so I suppose that would be akin to in this area, the Mid Atlantic, if we were interdicted from going to New York and had to think about all kinds of circuitous methods to get there, whereas now we can
Go to
just.
Canada, for
Oh,
example,
that's a
like
better
so,
example, right?
like
Right,
we as Americans, we can go to Canada without a visa. Canadians can come here without a visa, and you can literally just drive across the
right,
border. And imagine if they just shut it down completely, and if, especially people who have some sort of business or family and things like that, that would really affect their lives. And
right,
for Europe, it's even more so than I guess feels like even more so than Canada, because Europe had just people just got used to going to different countries and experience the different cultures there, and now it just feels like that separation again that we had during the Soviet Union times. And during the Soviet Union times, it was actually the Soviet Union that kept people in, that
right,
prevented people from leaving.
right.
But now it's the other way around. Russia or Belarus, they're not holding people in their
Mhm.
country. If you could have a visa, you can exit the country and go to another country. Um, uh, but that was the biggest complaint. Also, I just wanted to mention in terms of economies
Mhm.
of Belarus or Russia, just like the people are self-sufficient, the government, the politicians, they do have a similar approach to things. Belarus is very agrarian, so it's
Right.
agriculture is the biggest. business. I mean, they do produce the machines,
Mhm.
mostly for agriculture as well.
Okay.
And but they grow grain. They have cattle. They produce milk products that actually go to all of Russia and all of former Soviet Union. I even buy it here
Okay.
in the a Russian store. I buy condensed milk that's produced in the town where I grew up.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're really, I mean, they really focus on being self-sufficient and making sure that they have the reserves of that. When I went there, I noticed that a lot of products were made in the country. They don't bring in a lot of, so for example, one of the things that's a little more expensive for people there is clothing, because they don't bring in clothing from Asia as much as we bring, like we have Chinese clothing. They don't have
Sure.
as much of that
Okay.
in Belarus. They produce their own. So a lot of cotton products. They bring in cotton from other places. They process it in Belarus. They do grow linen. So they do blends, and a lot of clothes is natural fiber, cotton and linen, and it's a little on the pricey side there, but it's like it's produced in the country.
And yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of Americans have been willing to accept for a long, long time is, having to pay a little bit more for things that are produced inside the country. Because if you look at it right now, and we saw this during the 2020 period with the shutdowns and everything, we're ultra reliant on China for even our medications. And to me, that's untenable. Semiconductors, which this is a electronic society. We're dependent on other countries, Taiwan most notably, and the tensions that we see occurring there um, for that product. So I think on the personal level and on the governmental level as well, we would do well to be more self-sufficient. And I also think that this is the reason why these sanctions are not as effective as the United States hoped that they would be. Because yeah, you could do that to a society like Germany or America, where we again don't produce everything that we need. But it's really difficult to make an impact when a society is much more self-sufficient.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the government has been preparing for this. I'm sure there are challenges that they're facing with some of the things that they have now been producing. I heard of like airplane parts and things like that, so they still have to work on that. Other machinery possibly. But they have all the technology and they have the knowledge to start producing those things.
Right. Well, we certainly have established that land, okay, that people are putting to work in Belarus. So you've
Oh yeah.
confirmed that, I no longer look like a madman when I'm advocating that people go out and, even if you don't have your own land, you live in an apartment or you live in a townhome, there are community gardens everywhere in America. So they're extremely expensive. My cousin, she runs one of them in Maryland, and I asked her how expensive it was for people to, be a part of it. And she said $20. And I said, "Oh, $20 per month, that's not bad." And she said, "No, it's actually $20 per season. So it's even more affordable than I thought." So I think that again, self-sufficiency is the order of the day. We can take a page out of the book of the Belarusian people on that.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your insight. Was there anything else about the situation that you wanted to thought was important?
The one thing I just wanted to mention that being there and telling people that I'm visiting from America, I just want to say that everybody was very positive. I didn't feel any type of animosity, even though the whole political situation right now is that the West, is on the other side, and there's a war going on between the East and the West, and America is helping the West. That even though that is what is being shown on the news, regular people, I think, are very understanding of the difference between the politics and the people. And so that was nice to see that there was no animosity or any kind of bad comments or anything like
Good.
that towards Americans.
Well, that's good. Certainly happy to hear that. Yana, thank you so much. We will continue to rely on you for your insight into, the Eastern European part of the world. It's very valuable to us. And I hope you have a great afternoon. Soldiers, we will talk to you soon.